The grand chamber of Z-Prime was alive with heated murmurs as the Karok delegation processed the unsettling footage. The holographic screen in the center of the room replayed the same scene, a lone human striding through an alien wasteland. Twin suns blazed overhead, their combined heat enough to boil the blood of most species, but the human walked as if on a casual hike. His only visible equipment was a sturdy set of boots and a satchel slung over his shoulder. "Humans shouldn't even be alive," Gorak growled, his mandibles clicking in disbelief. Around him, the Karok delegation muttered uneasily, their usual bravado replaced by something they rarely experienced: unease. The Karok were a race bred for survival, with natural plating tougher than most metals and immune systems impervious to toxins that would liquefy lesser beings. And yet, here they were, watching something they couldn't understand. "Explain this, Drix," demanded Gorak, his tone sharp enough to cut through the din. Drix, a wiry Karok scientist with a penchant for precision, cleared his throat nervously. "Earth, the humans' home world, isn't like ours. It's not a true death world by our definitions. Its air is breathable, its waters aren't laced with acids, and its ecosystems, while dangerous, are not inherently hostile. But therein lies the paradox." He paused, summoning a holographic display of Earth. The projection showed a swirling mix of chaotic storms, volcanic eruptions, vast deserts, and frozen tundras. Earth's environment is unstable. Its challenges are diverse and constant. Humans evolved not to withstand a single overwhelming danger, but to adapt to a multitude of lesser ones. "Lesser?" scoffed Iraq, a battle-scarred warrior with a jagged scar splitting his scaled face. "We have faced predators the size of starships and storms that strip flesh from bone. What could Earth possibly offer that compares to that?" Drix hesitated, his glowing eyes flicking to the video feed. "Humans." The room went silent. The word hung in the air like a threat. Even Iraq, who thrived on defiance, seemed taken aback. "Humans," Drix continued, "are the apex predators of their world, not because of natural weapons or physical superiority, but because of their minds. They are relentless, adaptable, and cunning. They don't just survive, they dominate, and their history reflects this. They've subdued creatures far larger and stronger than themselves, often making them allies." The hologram shifted to images of humans alongside Earth's wildlife, massive canines with jaws powerful enough to crush bone, birds of prey that could spot a target from kilometers away, and even beasts with trunks and tusks used in ancient wars. In each image, humans stood at the center not as prey but as partners. "They form bonds," Drix said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "They take what should kill them and turn it into an ally. It's not instinct, it's ingenuity." "That's insanity," muttered Iraq. "What kind of species befriends something that could eat them?" "A successful one," replied a calm, unfamiliar voice from the back of the room. All eyes turned toward the source. The door to the chamber had opened, and standing there was a human. He was unremarkable at first glance, no natural armor, no visible weapons. But there was something about his presence that demanded attention. His gaze swept the room, calm and calculating, as if he were assessing threats. "Gentlemen," he said in flawless Karok, stepping into the chamber. "I hope I'm not interrupting." The delegation bristled at his confidence, their natural instincts to dominate rising to the surface. But the human ambassador, as he introduced himself, was unflinching. "You speak our tongue," Gorak noted, his tone laced with suspicion. The human smiled faintly. "We humans are fast learners. Adaptability, as your scientist so aptly put it, is our greatest strength." "Adaptability," Gorak repeated, narrowing his eyes. "You mean cowardice. You run, hide, and wait for opportunities. True strength is standing and fighting." The human's smile didn't waver. "Sometimes it is. But strength without strategy is just wasted effort. Tell me, Gorak, how many warriors have you lost fighting things you didn't fully understand?" The room grew cold. Gorak's mandibles clicked in irritation, but he didn't answer. The human took a few more steps forward, standing just shy of the hologram displaying Earth. "We don't claim to be invincible," he said, addressing the room. "We bleed, we break, we lose, but we learn. Every scar is a lesson. Every loss is a step toward victory, and that's why we're still here." Iraq snarled, his pride bruised. Bold words for such fragile creatures. The human turned to him, his gaze steady. "Perhaps, but consider this. Fragility forces us to be better, to think faster, to fight smarter. Would you like a demonstration?" The challenge hung in the air, and the Karok delegation froze. Was this human truly foolish enough to provoke one of the fiercest warriors in the galaxy? Gorak raised a hand, signaling for silence. "Enough," he said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "This isn't the time." The human stepped back, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. "Perhaps another time then. For now, I'm here to talk." But even as the meeting resumed, the Karok couldn't shake the feeling that they had just encountered something more dangerous than they'd ever imagined. Not because of the human's strength, but because of his resolve. And for the first time, the Death Worlders felt a chill they couldn't explain. The chamber buzzed with subdued tension as the human ambassador took his seat, exuding an unshakable calm. The Karok warriors and scholars exchanged uneasy glances, their initial bravado now tempered by uncertainty. The human's demeanor wasn't one of arrogance or defiance. It was something more unnerving. Confidence born of experience. Drix, the Karok scientist, was the first to break the silence. "Ambassador, your kind claims to thrive on this so-called adaptability. But what good is it when faced with true force? No strategy, no cunning, just overwhelming power." The human tilted his head slightly as if amused. "Power without purpose is just chaos. You're strong, yes, but strength alone doesn't win wars or ensure survival. It's about knowing when to fight and when to think." Iraq, still bristling from the earlier exchange, slammed his clawed hand onto the table, causing the hologram of Earth to flicker. "You speak as if you've faced what we have, human. You talk of strategy and survival, but have you fought storms that strip flesh from bone? Have you walked into a battlefield knowing that the air itself is poison?" The human's gaze didn't falter. "No," he admitted, his voice steady. "Earth doesn't have storms that strip flesh from bone, nor air that kills with a single breath. But we've faced extinction time and time again. Not because of our environment, but because of ourselves." The Karok delegation froze. Gorak's eyes narrowed and his mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Your greatest threat is your own kind?" The human nodded. "Always has been. Our history is a long, bloody tale of wars, famine, and disease, much of it caused by us. We're not just survivors of a harsh world. We've learned to survive each other." "That doesn't make sense," Iraq growled. "Why would you fight yourselves? What purpose does it serve?" "It's not always about purpose," the human replied. "Sometimes it's about fear, greed, or the simple fact that survival isn't enough. Humanity has always sought more knowledge, more power, more territory. And that drive has made us both our own worst enemies and our greatest allies." Gorak leaned forward, his curiosity piqued despite himself. "And what does that make you now? Are you here as an ally, or as a threat?" The human ambassador leaned back, his expression unreadable. "That depends on what you choose to see in us. We didn't come to this galaxy looking for enemies, but if we're pushed..." His voice grew colder, quieter. "Let's just say humans don't lose well." The room fell into a heavy silence. For a species like the Karok, whose entire existence was built around dominance and survival, the humans' words were deeply unsettling. They had always viewed strength as absolute, a measure of physical might and resilience. But this ambassador spoke of strength as something fluid, something unpredictable. Drix, ever the inquisitive mind, tapped his claws against his datapad. "Ambassador, earlier you spoke of alliances, of working with creatures on your world. Is that truly why you thrive? Because you're willing to compromise?" The human chuckled softly. "Compromise? That's a dangerous word. No, it's not about compromise. It's about partnership. On Earth, We've learned that survival often comes down to cooperation, not just with each other, but with the world itself. We don't dominate, we adapt. And yet you stand here, Iraq sneered, a representative of a species known for violence, speaking of peace. The human's smile faded slightly. Peace is the ideal, but when peace isn't possible, we fight. And when we fight... He paused for a moment, his gaze hardening. We fight to win. Humans don't enter conflicts lightly, but when we do, we commit fully. That's another reason we're here, to avoid unnecessary war. But don't mistake our preference for peace as weakness. The Karok delegation murmured among themselves, processing the paradox. A species capable of immense violence, yet one that sought cooperation? The concept was foreign, almost heretical to their worldview. Gorak, ever the pragmatist, leaned back in his seat, his gaze fixed on the ambassador. You speak of alliances, adaptation, and strategy, yet I see a lone human standing before a room of deathworlders. Why should we believe that your kind can offer anything more than words? The human leaned forward, meeting Gorak's stare. Because words are just the beginning. You've seen what we're capable of, our resilience, our adaptability. But what you haven't seen is what happens when we're pushed to our limits. Humans are not defined by strength or armor. We're defined by how we rise after every fall. And if you give us the chance, we'll show you a strength that no amount of brute force can match. The chamber fell silent once more, the weight of the human's words settling over the Karok like a storm cloud. They had faced countless threats, battled the fiercest predators, and survived the harshest environments. But this human had introduced an entirely new concept, the strength of unity, the power of resilience. Gorak's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Perhaps, he said slowly, you are not as soft as you seem, human, but words will only carry you so far. If you truly wish to earn our respect, you'll have to prove it. The human ambassador smiled faintly, his confidence unshaken. Then let me know how I can prove it. Humans don't shy away from a challenge. Gorak's mandibles clicked sharply as he rose from his seat, towering over the human ambassador. His movements were deliberate, his presence imposing. You speak of challenges, human, but challenges among the Karok are not mere words. They are physical, visceral. Are you prepared to prove your resilience under our terms? The human ambassador's expression remained calm, though a flicker of interest passed through his eyes. If your terms are fair, then yes, I'm prepared. The delegation stirred. It was rare for outsiders to accept such a direct challenge, let alone without hesitation. Iraq's lip curled in a sneer. This human doesn't know what he's asking for. Enough, Gorak said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. We will not insult our guest with baseless doubts. If he fails, but he will have chosen to face the trial. Drix leaned forward, his curiosity overtaking his skepticism. Which trial will you choose, Gorak? The trial of endurance, strength, or perhaps the void path? Gorak considered for a moment, his eyes narrowing as he studied the human. None of those, he said finally. Those trials test what we already know: brute force, survival under pain, adaptability to the void. But this human speaks of something different. Let us test his mind. The declaration caused a ripple of surprise among the delegation. The trial of insight was rarely invoked. It required not only intelligence, but cunning, foresight, and a calmness under pressure that even the fiercest Karok warriors struggled to maintain. The trial of insight? Iraq's tone was incredulous. You believe this human could pass? Gorak's gaze never left the ambassador. He claims that strength is more than physical. Let him prove it. The ambassador nodded, his posture relaxed yet purposeful. Very well. What does the trial of insight entail? Gorak gestured to Drix, who activated a holographic display in the center of the room. A three-dimensional maze appeared, its shifting walls and glowing traps casting an eerie light across the chamber. This is the Labyrinth of Echoes, Gorak explained. It is a mental and physical challenge. You must navigate its corridors, avoiding traps and solving puzzles to reach the center. You will have 1 hour. Fail, and the labyrinth will trap you, leaving you to call for rescue, an act of dishonor. The ambassador stepped forward, studying the labyrinth with interest. A test of strategy, adaptability, and quick thinking. I accept. Gorak's mandibles twitched in approval. Good. The challenge begins now. The human ambassador entered the labyrinth, the holographic walls shimmering around him as the maze came to life. The Karak delegation watched in silence, their expressions ranging from skepticism to curiosity. This was not a trial of brute strength, it was a test of resilience in its purest form. Inside the labyrinth, the ambassador moved with deliberate caution. The shifting walls created an almost hypnotic disorientation, but he remained focused, his eyes scanning for patterns. The first puzzle appeared before him, a series of glowing tiles, each emitting a different tone. Simple logic, he muttered, stepping carefully onto the tiles in sequence, matching the tones to a melody he had deciphered. The tiles stabilized and a path opened ahead. Outside, Drix observed the ambassador's progress with growing fascination. He's adapting quickly, he remarked. Most challengers waste time deciphering the first puzzle. Luck, Iraq grunted. It won't last. Deeper into the labyrinth, the ambassador encountered a trap, a section of the corridor that collapsed into an abyss at irregular intervals. He crouched, watching the sequence carefully, and timed his movements with precision. He darted across just as the floor reassembled behind him. Back in the chamber, Gorak folded his arms, his expression unreadable. He's calm, focused. That will serve him well. The final challenge loomed ahead, a locked gate requiring a series of symbols to be aligned. As the ambassador studied the symbols, his mind worked at a fevered pace. The symbols represented constellations, and he quickly deduced the pattern by matching them to Earth's night sky. With a final twist, the gate opened, revealing the center of the labyrinth. The ambassador stepped through, breathing a sigh of relief as the shimmering walls dissipated. He emerged from the labyrinth to the stunned silence of the Karak delegation. Gorak's mandibles clicked in approval as he stepped forward. You've completed the trial. Few do, even among us. The ambassador smiled faintly, his demeanor composed despite the trial's intensity. As I said, humans adapt. The chamber was silent, the air thick with unspoken thoughts. The human ambassador stood at the labyrinth's edge, his calm gaze meeting the intense scrutiny of the Karak delegation. Gorak broke the silence, his voice a mix of curiosity and newfound respect. You have succeeded where many Karak have failed, he admitted. Your methodical approach was unexpected. But tell me, human, was it simply intelligence or something more? The ambassador tilted his head, his expression thoughtful. Intelligence played a role, certainly. But success in the labyrinth isn't just about solving puzzles or avoiding traps. It's about perspective. Seeing patterns where others see chaos, using calm in the face of pressure. Humans thrive on such challenges because we're used to them. Used to them? Iraq scoffed, his tone tinged with disbelief. You claim your world forces you to endure challenges like this regularly? More than you might think, the ambassador replied evenly. Our survival has always been about adapting to the unpredictable. Floods, droughts, predators, conflicts. Earth has no shortage of obstacles. To thrive, we learned not to rely solely on strength, but on ingenuity and teamwork. It's not just about surviving the challenge, it's about understanding it. The room stirred, the Karak delegation exchanging uneasy glances. For a species that had prided itself on brute strength and unyielding resilience, the idea of survival through adaptability was both alien and humbling. Gorak stepped closer, towering over the human, yet finding no sign of intimidation in his posture. You've proven your resourcefulness, but adaptability alone cannot account for the tenacity we've seen in your species. What drives you, human? What fuels your ability to endure when others would break? The ambassador paused, his gaze steady as he considered the question. For humans, it's more than just survival. It's the desire to protect, to create, to connect. We endure pain, loss, and struggle because we know what's at stake. The people, the lives we cherish, It's that sense of purpose that keeps us moving forward when everything else says we should stop. A low murmur spread through the room as the Kerok wrestled with this idea. Purpose, connection. These were not concepts their species typically valued. Their survival had always been solitary, defined by individual strength and dominance. The ambassador's words hinted at a strength that was more complex, more profound. Drix, the scientist, leaned forward, his analytical mind alight with curiosity. You claim that purpose drives humans. But what about fear? Do you not feel it? Does it not cripple your kind as it does others? Of course we feel fear, the ambassador answered, his voice calm but resolute. Fear is part of being human, but we don't let it stop us. Instead, we use it. Fear sharpens our senses, makes us think faster, act smarter. It's not about eliminating fear, it's about mastering it. The delegation was silent once more. Even Iraq, who had been openly skeptical, seemed subdued, his fierce demeanor tempered by reluctant intrigue. The human had faced their most skilled warrior, completed their labyrinth, and now was unraveling the core of their beliefs with unsettling ease. Gorak, ever the leader, finally spoke. You speak of fear and purpose as strengths, yet these are things we Kerok consider weaknesses. Perhaps we have been too rigid in our views. The admission hung in the air, surprising both the delegation and the ambassador. Gorak turned to face his people, his massive frame radiating authority. This human has shown us that strength is not merely the hardness of armor or the sharpness of claws. It is the ability to adapt, to endure, and to see beyond the immediate challenge. He turned back to the ambassador, his mandibles clicking decisively. You have earned the respect of the Kerok, but respect is not enough. Tell me, human, what would you ask of us in return for this lesson? The ambassador smiled, his expression warm but measured. I don't seek tribute or dominance. What I seek is partnership. Humanity is strong, yes, but we know our limits. Together, Kerok and humans could achieve more than either of us could alone. The Kerok delegation murmured, the weight of the proposal sinking in. A partnership between such vastly different species was unprecedented, yet the logic was undeniable. Gorak's mandibles twitched thoughtfully as he considered the implications. You propose unity where others would seek submission, he said slowly. It is unusual. It's how we survive, the ambassador replied. And it's how we thrive. After a long pause, Gorak extended one massive hand toward the human. It was a gesture of profound significance among the Kerok, reserved only for those who had proven themselves as equals. The ambassador took it without hesitation, his smaller hand dwarfed by Gorak's but no less firm. Then let this be the first step, Gorak declared, his voice resonating through the chamber. A partnership born not of weakness, but of mutual respect and shared strength. As the room erupted in low murmurs of approval, the ambassador felt a sense of quiet triumph. Humanity had taken its first step toward a new alliance, one that would reshape not only their relationship with the Kerok, but perhaps the galaxy itself.